Do you feel like God gave you a dream to use trading to bless your family, but that dream is taking forever to come true? Does it ever feel like somehow it's turning into a nightmare instead? Well, if that's you, then you are in the right place, because in this video, we're going to look at a character from the Bible who went through the exact same thing. I am Pepper, and this is the Godly Trading Podcast, Bible study for traders. Thank you for being here. We are live. If you have any questions along the way, just feel free to drop them in the chat, and the producer will put them on my screen here. Tonight is going to be all about talking about the story of Joseph and how that story is just so applicable to us as traders. The journey that he went on is a journey that I think all of us can both relate to, and we can probably all pick out some spot along his journey and say, that's where I am now. So, picking up in Genesis chapter 37, we find Joseph has a dream, and he should have known. But Joseph is 17 years old at this point when he has his dream, and his dream is that he has a sheaf of whatever, wheat, corn, barley, and that he's out there, and his brothers' sheaves of wheat, barley, whatever, bow down to his. Now he's got 11 brothers, and he's not the youngest, but he's younger. Actually, he might be the youngest at this point. He tells them. Now, he'd been on the earth for 17 years. He had known these people, his brothers, for 17 years. If you have a brother, if you grew up living with a brother, I'm intentionally not looking at Mr. Producer, because, okay, Joseph was not at all to blame for what his brothers did, but he really couldn't. He should have known better. Anyway, the first thing that we see in this story is that God gives Joseph a purpose, and it is one of leadership and provision, taking care of people. And I think that all of us as traders, that is where we start. We start with this idea that we have this purpose for trading, that trading is going to be this, for lack of a better term, this way out for our family. We're going to use trading as the vehicle to lift our family up from wherever we are. Maybe a good situation, maybe a bad one. But trading is the dream. And I've talked to so many traders, especially recently. And I've heard this several times in the last 2 weeks. That someone says, hey, I feel like God put this desire, this dream of trading within me, and it won't go away. And I pray that God say, if this is the wrong thing, please take it away from me. I've had several people tell me that exact same thing. So when God gives you a purpose, when God gives you a dream, you can tell right away when it's from him or not, with a simple prayer of, hey, God, if this is not what you're telling me to do, if this is not from you, if this is just me being dug from up and getting distracted by the nearest squirrel, then just please let me be distracted by something else. And if it's still there, then you know it's from God. And so Joseph had this dream. We all have this dream of saying, hey, I want to take care of my family by doing this. Because let's face it, there's so many less emotionally draining ways to make money besides trading. So if this is you, just buckle up along for the ride here. So Joseph gets this purpose from God that says, hey, you're going to be in a position of authority. So he's given a purpose. Let's write that on. Well, purpose, we got that on the board already. Purpose. I'm not going to do that last week, and it won't be spaghetti. John Madden. Then, we're not going to blame Joseph again. However, as soon as he achieves this purpose, as soon as he's given this purpose, does he immediately get profit? Does he immediately make it to the promised land? No. The first thing that happens in his life are problems. Now, again, the wisdom of telling his 11 older brothers who were out in the fields taking care of the sheep while he's at home, wearing his nice clothes, that they're going to bow down to him. We can debate the finer points of that decision. But none of it warranted being killed, right? They see him coming over the hill. Oh, look, there's the dreamer. Let's kill him. Now, my two sons have a unique relationship. But I think I can firmly say that one has never plotted the murder of the other one. So there's that. But we see all of the problems immediately that happened. And actually, we see this many times in the Bible repeated. When someone is given a purpose, given an anointing by God, the first thing that happens to them is something negative. One of the great channels on YouTube, Myron Golden, talks about that disruption always follows intention. And so we see David, he's anointed king, and then he has to run for his life. Jesus is the Holy Spirit descends on him, and he has to go in the desert for 40 days. Anime Fanatic says, I just read that in my Bible yesterday. It is amazing to me when you start opening your mind to, hey, I wonder if the Bible has something to say about insert random thing here, that you're going to find, thank you, Nate, you're going to find applicable stories anywhere. So we see that the problems arise. So first thing that happens with Joseph is he opens his mouth, he gets thrown, first they're going to kill him, then they said, no, let's sell him, we'll throw him in a pit. All right. And I have to, this is not chasing a rabbit, I have to throw this out there. It's one of the funniest, not funny, but funny situations in the Bible. So it literally says, they throw him in the pit. Fortunately, it's a dry pit, so he doesn't drown. They throw him in the pit and then sit down for a meal, right? They take their brother, they throw him in a pit, and they go, all right, who's hungry? Yeah, I could eat. Well, what's that about? But again, brothers. He gets thrown in a pit. He gets sold into slavery. So, from his perspective, right, he's been given a purpose by God of leadership. He's his dad's favorite son. His coat of many colors. Why did I put that in air quotes? Because it's not actually a coat of many colors. It's a coat with long sleeves. But I'm not going down that rabbit hole either. Apart from this, I encourage everybody out there, find a way to not just rely on the English version of the Bible. When you come across anything, I wonder what. Go to anywhere that's got a Strong's Concordance. As strong as in, not muscle that I'm not. Strong's Concordance, and look up the individual word. The word for color means long sleeves. The general idea is the same, right? He was given a coat that you couldn't work in, which was only given to royalty who were special people, right? So, coat of many colors, he was special. Coat with long sleeves, he can't work. He's an overseer, he's special. The intent was the same. But I love that this is the actual verse that got me into individual word study of the Bible. I heard someone once say, you can't know what the word says until you know what the words say. So, Joseph is his dad's favorite. Clearly his dad's favorite. His dad's a wealthy man, prominent fellow. So he's thinking, okay, what's my path to success? When we decide on trading, we all think, hey, I'm going to quit my job tomorrow or next week at the latest when I'm going to do this trading thing. I'm going to have this quick path to success. Joseph probably had it mapped out in his head. Hey, I'm going to somehow, some way take over the family for my 11 older brothers, and I'm going to be in charge. Well, now he's sold into slavery. He's going backwards, right? He has fallen down the ladder of social hierarchy to what he probably thinks is the lowest he can go. He is sold into slavery. Problems abound. He goes to he's actually put in charge of his master's household. And then later on in the scene, he's put in charge of the prison. So even with the problems that arise, and when you decide to start trading, the first thing that's going to happen are going to be some problems. You might have some wins along the way, but it won't be long before problems do arise. But we do see the amazing hand of providence at work in Joseph's life from the get-go. He gets to Potiphar's household. Now, he was 17 years old when the story starts. And he's 30 years old when he's put in charge of Egypt. So there's a 13-year period here. We don't know how it's broken up. Did he spend a year in the pit? No, he probably spent a day in the pit. Did he spend 13 years in Potiphar's household and 5 days in the prison? We don't know. All we know is he was 17 when the story starts and he's 30 at the end of the story. So during this 13 years of problems, we still see the hand of God, the providence. That's what providence means. God's sovereign authority at work in our lives. We see the providence of God happening. How? Well, look, who he is sold to. He could have been sold to anybody. He's sold to the one guy in Egypt who wouldn't believe his wife when she said that someone tried to seduce him. Because in the story, Joseph is put in charge of Potiphar's entire household. The hand of God is on Joseph and everything that he's doing. To the point that Potiphar's like, hey man, you're in charge of it all. You just do everything. Take it. You're doing a great job. God blesses Potiphar because Joseph is there being in charge. And then his wife, we don't know what her name is. We might. I don't remember what her name is. Tries to seduce him. He says no. She comes up with a cockamamie story. And says that Potiphar is enraged and throws Joseph in prison. If he really honestly thought that Joseph tried to force himself on his wife, he would have killed him. He was the captain of the guard. He would have had someone else kill him. He might have done it himself. He wouldn't have thrown him in prison. Clearly, Potiphar knew his wife could not be trusted. So that's just a little funny thing there. But we see the hand of God at work, putting him in certain places. Same thing with you when you are going through what you're going through in your trading. You think that I'm wandering in the wilderness, but you are being put in the places that God wants you. Because why? Because the next thing that we come up with, this is so much better than last week's spaghetti. The entire purpose of the problems was that Joseph was being prepared. What do you mean? Well, okay. First things first. He had to learn a new language. If he's going to be in charge of everything, he had to learn Egyptian. Much like when you say, I want to be a trader, I've got to learn a new language. Things like pips and points and forex and futures and options and candles and indicators. There's an entire language that goes around puts and calls. There's an entire language that goes with trading that you have to learn. There's so much preparation involved. And while you are wandering around in the wilderness, focused on your problems, like Joseph, I'm at the bottom of a pit. Now, I don't know which would have been worse for him, being at the bottom of the pit, hearing his brothers eating supper, or being falsely imprisoned. They're probably both equal in different ways. But he was going through these for a specific reason, to teach him things. Clearly, he was given, I don't have the right notes in front of me. Let's think about what he had to learn through this whole, he had to learn a brand new language, just like you do as a trader. He had to learn new skills. Up until the point he was thrown in the pit, all we know about Joseph is that he was kind of his dad's errand boy and a bit of a tattletale and really should have kept his mouth shut more often. But what do we see when he goes in the household of Potiphar? We're not told the time frame between when he's bought and when Potiphar says, hey, you're in charge of all of it. All we know is that he developed skills of management that allowed him to be put in charge of Potiphar's entire household. And it says that Potiphar's household was blessed because of it. Then, another problem pops up. He gets thrown in prison. And the captain of the guard there, sticking a pin in the being thrown in prison part, chasing a rabbit for just 30 seconds. Potiphar is referred to as the captain of the guard. The jailer is referred to as the captain of the guard. Is it possible that Potiphar and the jailer were the same person? Is it possible that Potiphar was in charge of the jail, knows that Joseph is incredibly capable, so he says, hey, I'm not going to kill you because my wife is a bit of a floozy. I know her. It wasn't his fault. I'm going to stick him over here in jail and let him handle all those problems for me. So is it possible that the person who put Joseph in charge of the prison was Potiphar himself? Maybe. Even if it wasn't, his management skills were developed yet again. So he had these skills that he had to learn. And because of the blessing that we see of God's hand on the house of Potiphar, and somehow or another blessings on the people, it says that the jailer was blessed also. I don't know how. How do you bless a jail? I'm not quite sure how that works. But we know that it happened. Because the same Joseph that said no to Potiphar when he was in charge is the same Joseph that's helping out people. He sees two guys, the butler and the baker, and the candlestick maker apparently was beheaded already, in prison. And he said, hey, why are you sad? was an odd question to ask, don't you think? Two guys who were of a lofty position find themselves in jail one day because they ticked off the king. Why would you ask why they're sad? And yet, Joseph was thorough enough to say, hey guys, let me check in on you. Let me see what's going on with you. He had developed the discipline to be the same person of respect and responsibility, no matter where he was. If you're signed up for the newsletter or the email list, you're going to get an email this week about, hey, being the same trader of integrity when no one else is watching. This is what Joseph was. So he developed these skills of learning a new language, developing skills in a totally different area of life, and being disciplined. Does any of that sound like trading to you? So yes, he was going through a period of problems, 13-year period of problems. Again, think about his perspective. God told me I was going to be in charge. My family was going to bow down to me, and it's been 13 years. And nothing has happened but bad things to me. This is the time when God is preparing him for what he's going to be doing and giving him all those skills. And then, positioning. Another P word. I think last week was all P's as well. Mm-hmm. Next week we'll switch to a different letter. Position. And this one's important. And I had never thought about this until I heard of it recently. Someone mentioned it. So, the two former officials of Pharaoh, the butler and the baker, are thrown in prison. Doesn't say why. They had displeased Pharaoh somehow. That's all it says. They have dreams. Joseph interprets their dreams. One guy, can you imagine how Joseph must have felt? Because he tells them, so the butler goes first. Hey, interpret my dream. And Joseph's like, hey, yeah, the grapes, and I'm squeezing grapes there's 3 bundles of grapes, and I'm squeezing them into the cup, and I'm giving them to Pharaoh. Hey, that means in 3 days, you are going to get your job back and get out of prison. And the baker's like, fantastic, let me tell you my dream. I had these 3 baskets of bread on my head, and the birds are coming to eat them. Joseph's like, yeah, it's not good. In 3 days, you're going to die, and you're going to get hung, and your head's going to... I mean, can you imagine what how Joseph's like, how does he deliver that news to this guy? He just gave this other fella fantastic news, and the baker's like, yes, let's go. And he's like, so what had happened was, here's what happens. Okay, anyway, long story short, the butler goes to Pharaoh, and Joseph's like, hey man, don't forget me. I'm your guy, right? I took care of you, hooked you up. And the butler's like, man, I got you. Don't worry about it. Gets back to Pharaoh. He's like, what's that guy's name again? Anyway, but someone pointed out, what would have happened if the butler had immediately remembered Pharaoh? If the butler's like, day one, hey boss, here's your cup of Gatorade. There's this guy in prison running the whole place, fantastic, falsely accused. He needs to be sprung. And Pharaoh's like, all right, set him free. And Joseph gets set free. What would have happened? What was Joseph's most likely decision he would have made if he had suddenly been set free that day? He'd gone home. Why wouldn't he have gone home? I mean, there's 11 brothers who wanted to kill him. Well, 10, right? Reuben didn't. But anyway, he would have gone home. He would not have been in the position that God wanted. So God was orchestrating this whole thing, the providential hand of God, walking him through all his problems, sending him through a season of preparation so that he could be in the position that he had appointed for him. Alliteration can be difficult from time. So, positioning. The story gets to the point where Pharaoh has a dream, no one can interpret it. The butler's like, oh no. So, do you remember when we had that thing and he threw me in prison? Well, there was a guy. Sorry about this. I should have told you about this a while back. There was a guy who could do a thing, and here he is. And by the way, when they say Joseph had to shave, Egyptians had a thing about hair. They didn't like hair at all. So Joseph had to shave head to toe. That was one of the reasons his brothers didn't recognize him, was that he had to shave head to toe. He was bald. Anyway, not going there. Can you imagine shaving your legs with 2,000, with the knives of the day? Anyway, I don't want to think about it. So, Joseph goes to Pharaoh. Pharaoh, they had their conversation, and Pharaoh says, all right, It's your idea. You've got the plan. After, well, probably before position. The entire time, God had a providential plan. I'm just going to write on the word plan. And this is where we usually end up as traders. We go through our problems, not realizing that everything we're going through is preparing us to fulfill our purpose. And if you're anything like me, you get to the end of it, you get so sick of the problem, say, you know what? Okay, fine. I'm going to sit down and actually create a plan. Which brings me to our sponsor, and Mr. Producer will put there's a notepad note hovering on your right screen. He'll drop this in the chat, and we'll put it in the description as well. We actually have a program for how to create your own trade plan. And if you just go to our simple godlytrading.com, again with the alliteration, /program, you can find out more information about how to come up with that plan for yourself. Now, June is already sold out. Got a few spots for July. But that is where I was. I had been through the misery. I wrote the book because of the misery. Well, I wrote into the book the misery that I went through. And I said, okay, I am finally going to sit down and I'm going to come up with a plan from the beginning. And it was the most important thing I ever did. I took all of the problems I had been through and finally realized, hey, I have been prepared for this. I've been preparing for this. Thank God I had the providential hand of God on me, guiding me through this. King David, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. God is walking with us the entire time, leading us to the point where, hey, it's now time to come up with a plan. And what we do in the program is we sit you down and we say, let's take a hard look at ourselves and come up with a plan to fulfill your purpose that fits your lifestyle, honors your family, and doesn't take time away from it. That's the gist of our program. Like I said, June is sold out already. We've got a few spots for July. You can find more information there. Link in the description. God had a specific position that he wanted Joseph to occupy. That position didn't exist until Pharaoh said it did. So this dream, this purpose that Joseph had been given of, I'm going to be in charge, my family's going to bow down to me one day. Maybe he thought, hey, I can do this, I can do that, I can do all these things to benefit my family. I'm going to do it tomorrow. This position he had in his mind took him 13 years to get there because the position didn't exist. Pharaoh says, only here sitting on the throne will I be greater than you. You're going to be over in all of Egypt. He created the position of second in charge of Egypt right there on the spot and put Joseph in charge of the whole country. And as a result of where Joseph ended up, he came up with a plan to save the whole people from famine, the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine. Came up with his plan, was able to finally save his family. He brings them in. They have a relatively drama-filled reconciliation. And then Pharaoh's like, hey, give them the best spot, give them all the stuff they need, set them up. They're your family, you take care of them. Joseph was finally, after 13 years, when I think about that, and think about the month of May that I went through, and the whining and complaining that I did during the month of May, and Joseph spent 13 years waiting to fulfill his purpose, the purpose that he knew God gave him. It does kind of make 1 month's worth of whining and complaining kind of sad in comparison. I didn't whine and complain the entire month. 12% of the month. At the end of all of that, given a purpose, running into problems, maybe a few of them of his own making, but mostly problems that were there but because of the providential plan of God, sent through a long period of preparation, finally positioned correctly. Finally, after all of that, Joseph was able to fulfill the promise that God had for him all that long time ago. So when you are on this journey of trading, you think, yes, this is what I want to do to help my family, to bless my family, to do whatever it is for my family. And you go through all of the turmoil. Just remember that if God gave you the purpose, God will lead you to the point of fulfilling the promise. Maybe it'll take you a month. Maybe it'll take you 13 years. Probably will be somewhere in between. Ideally, somewhere in between. Our program is 2 months, so it's not going to be a month if you're with us. But I just, so often, especially when we pay attention to social media, and it's hard for me to complain about social media given the fact that this that you're watching is in fact social media. It generates unrealistic expectations for traders, and those are the ones that discourage you the most. When you feel like you're not living up to unrealistic expectations, I guess living up to realistic expectations is what we all are searching for. So just know that if you are walking in the purpose that God gave you, don't despair for whatever it is you're going through, whatever problems you're going through. Just understand that if it's not working for you, it's working on you. You are becoming the person, and I'll end with this, repeated so many times throughout the Bible. Be, do, have. It is everywhere, starting in Genesis. If you've ever read the book, 1 Minute Millionaire, they stole that from God. Be, do, have. It's a good book. You are becoming the person that can do what it takes to have what you need for your family. And you will see the fulfillment of the promise that God gave you when He gave you that purpose. It just takes enduring everything. And if Joseph can endure it, then having a 6% loss for the month of May, honestly, I should quit my whining. But I'm kind of glad I went through it because at least I have an example to mention to people. So thank you for being here. If anybody has any questions, you can leave a comment here in this video. You can always reach out to us at godlytrading.com. It's the hub of everything that we do. With that, guys, I will be back here next Sunday evening at 5. We're going to hear live 5 o'clock Central every single week. Coming up this week, we're starting a brand new lunchtime learning session. I do apologize for the constant alliteration. Lunchtime Learning Live on Friday. If I could make Friday another word, I would. This Friday at noon Central. So with that, guys, thank you for being here, and I'll see y'all next time.